The Banking Scene Director's Cut goes behind the scenes, sharing stories and insights to help you build the bank of tomorrow.
Morning, Rik.
Hello, Andrew.
You were in the audience of my panel at Sibos
Yes,
on
I was, and I regret not being on stage.
culturally aligned AI. What did you think of it? What were your main questions that came out of that? And did you learn anything new?
I was the one asking questions this time.
That's
I
what
did
happened.
learn, I'd say most of the criticism, etc. I've been thinking about that before, but what it did make me think about is the dominant role of the United States in AI today. And we always think about it in a way of, the sense of resilience and in the sense of being dependent on the United States. But rarely do we consider the impact of having those tools developed by American citizens that live in a completely different culture. And you start to see that today in the writing as well. Everything becomes a lot more American, so to say, because it is suggested by something very smart. And that's where you see, I think, in day-to-day life already in practice, what that lack of cultural alignment could mean in the lack of cultural alignment in AI could mean for each and every one of us, irrespective of the sector we're working in.
And in the pre-panel conversations, the interviews that I had with each one of the panelists, all three of them brought up one specific concern, and that was tech colonialization.
Yeah.
And that's early in the morning to pronounce that. Colonization, colonialization, the concept that, way back in history, the world was colonialized by certain groups.
It's outrageous still today.
Yes, and that's impacted, it's had an impact on their local culture, and that's cascaded down through the generations. And there is a concern that because, as you've just said, the majority of the AI models that people are commonly using today have come from big American organizations. OpenAI for ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini, and with their training data that they've been using, you end up where they are culturally
But it's
blind.
not just the data, it's also interpretation of data. And they need to curate outcomes, etc. All that is based by their own luggage, their own background, their own perspectives, their own vision, their own culture, which is also why I thought it was rather surprising how you started the blog of this week. You said financial services like to believe they run on numbers, not narratives, which I completely understand. Yet, as a panel I moderated at Sibos in Frankfurt on culturally aligned AI, made clear money moves through culture first. I was surprised by the word money because I think it same applies for data, whether there are gains to be made or not, because the building, the structure, the fabric of building it, whether that is for financial gains or not, whether that's for influence or not, is always kind of biased, as we have recently seen. And luckily that becomes more clear, and luckily it becomes more transparent because we are forced to think about it. It was there in the past as well, but it was a human bias and we respected that. Today it's a machine and we expect to be rational.
Was there a question in there, Rik?
Why did you use the word money?
Well, simply because the audience that I was writing for is in financial services, and the panel wasn't just generally culturally aligned AI, it was culturally aligned AI in payments and financial services. So we had a very specific narrow remit because it was at Sibos and we were speaking to a financial services audience. So what they wanted to say was that money that flows through financial services systems needs to have a cultural angle to it in the way that those services are provided and processed. And Ammar Younas gave a particularly...
One who just read my book.
He has just read your book and posted photos about it on LinkedIn. He was my philosopher. He's a qualified and trained lawyer and
Pretty good
general
dancer, I'm told as well.
doctor. Yeah, have a look at the Inner Tribe dance movie for that. But he had given us actually quite a good example just to start off with, a real tangible example from Chinese culture. And the question that I'd posed him was, is aligning your AI culturally desirable in the way that you provide financial services? And his answer, along with the other panelists, was a resounding yes. First off, it is desirable. And he wanted to illustrate that, and the rest of the world could learn from each other's regional cultures. And the concrete example that he gave was something that resonated with me. Now,
Yeah, with me as well.
your kids aren't old enough for you to experience this yet, but I have this with my children. My wife and I will take my daughter and her fiance out to dinner, and I will pay the bill at the end because I'm giving them a treat. And then a couple of minutes later, I will get a ping in my bank account and my daughter's paid me half of the bill. And I look around at her and I go, thank you very much, but actually I'm a bit offended. I'm treating you. So I ping her the money back again. And then she goes, Dad, that's unfair. And she sends me the money back. And we end up playing money ping pong.
How long does that take?
It usually goes for a couple of rounds, and then I've just got to give up because my daughter is very stubborn, almost as stubborn as my wife. So I just give up in the end. But in some cultures, refusing a gift or giving back a gift is actually, that's dishonor. That you mustn't give a gift back again. You mustn't return a gift. So if somebody gives you money, it's dishonorable to just send it back to them.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened is that in China, they wanted to prevent people from being able to reject a gift. And in Chinese culture, there is this concept of red envelopes. When you give gifts at certain times, it's given in a red envelope. And a red envelope gift, that is a gift and you can't return it. That would lose face and that wouldn't be acceptable culturally. So what, he didn't mention which financial institution it was. What they did is they introduced the concept of red letter payments.
Yeah.
And he said, even graphically, the user interface and everything, you put the money into a red envelope and then you send it to somebody. And when they receive a red letter payment, a transfer, a gift, they can't return it.
I know you didn't mention it, but I think it was Alipay or WeChat.
Sorry, it could be on WeChat. I can't remember which one it was. However, it's something like that. And interestingly, Monzo, which is the bank that both my daughter and I use, have introduced the concept of stopping people from you can actually turn off at system level for a period of time. You can turn it off and on. So now what I do actually when I take my daughter and her fiance out is, before I pay the bill, I turn off her ability to pay me. And then I know that she can't ping me money and we won't get into this ping pong. But it's culturally, it's something that I thought we could learn from other cultures. If Monzo decided to implement red letter payments and my daughter gave me one of those, I wouldn't be able to return it. I would be. But it was an interesting and very stark thing. And there's a number of different concepts around the world. He had spoken about the concept of Ubuntu in Africa with community finance and social credit models, and Confanzia in Latin America, which is all about trust building, reputational, almost lending your reputation to somebody to say, this person is good for a loan because I say so and I have a good reputation and standing with the bank. So therefore the bank will give you a loan even if they don't know you. And what the panelists were trying to get across is there are concepts around the world that the Western world could learn from and would be advantageous potentially even to bake into the core system. However, what is very important is for you to take those cultural concepts into account when developing payment and banking and financial systems and services for local people. And the ones that do that, they get a very strong following and a lot of loyalty from the customers in that
Absolutely,
region.
because it relates. It relates. And that a couple of years ago, we had a conference based in Art Night, Mirrors of Society. It's exactly about that. To what extent can you read what the local habits are, what the needs are, and to what respect can you develop the right products and services to cater those needs? And that makes you relatable to the local population. So absolutely. But then I wonder, and we touched upon it a little bit as well, but how can we solve the problem of lack of cultural AI without touching the very fabric of it? All the main AI players today are American, they're US aligned, or they're Chinese, with one European exception maybe, but definitely not majority. There is no diversity in AI today.
So what, and again, I'm going back to Ammar because he had brought up the point of the cultural issues need to be addressed at what he calls the manufacturing stage.
Yeah, exactly. The fabric.
So the data collection. So nobody, although as you say, the current AIs are very US centric, you can retrain AI on your own data set. And what he was saying is it's important to come up with your own training data that is culturally sensitive, that has that culture's biases even baked into it. Now, Patricia Shaw she's a tech ethicist, and she advises a lot of companies about the ethical implementation of AI. And she said that there are newer standards at the moment that are out there to help people collect this data. Now, I'm using the word collect very carefully there because on any panel, I purposely use provocative language in order to be able to get a reaction from the
Well, provocative for an old man.
And within the boundaries of societal norms and acceptability, Rik. And it is, I don't, as a rule, swear on a panel or anything like this, but I had used the word harvesting data. And
My God, Andrew, what did you do there?
Well, it actually triggered quite a few of the people where they went back and they went, you don't harvest people. They're not a crop for you to go and make money of. And that was the reaction. They said the collection of the data must be done in a culturally sensitive way. And this is where Lisa Russel had jumped in to point out the work of, particularly in a large number of cultures, the work of storytellers. And as she was saying, if you are introducing financial services, which are typically a complex topic, into areas where you have got large populations of unbanked or underbanked or people that are not particularly financially literate, you can't just do a copy paste of something that you've done in another region and expect it to work. You have to develop a narrative around that, a story, and one that resonates. So, for example, if you're doing something in Africa where there is a strong culture of community lending and community borrowing, you would need to design a product that takes that into account. And there are products and there are banks that do that out there that support this kind of thing. And Lisa's approach or suggestion was to work with culturally recognized storytellers to validate your narratives and also to do the cultural data collection in a sensitive way, in a way that the people don't think that something is being done to them, but rather is being done with them. Now,
You
when
can
you
also
put
translate that back to, for example, Belgium, to make it a bit more tangible for our key audience with, for example, Kate Coins. That brings it all together because Lisa will be at the art night. The head of the Kate Coins will be at the art night. But what they're doing there is like they built a kind of a stablecoin many years ago. But you can't go to consumers and say, hey, we have stablecoins, now use it. They made it more of a loyalty scheme today with the potential to make it a much broader programmable money use case. But right now they're just testing, investigating, see what works, what narrative aligns with expectations from consumers, makes them adapt, etc. And that is, I think, a very good local example of how to approach those things.
But it's taken them a while to get to that point.
Absolutely.
As you said,
Yeah.
when was the Kate coin first introduced?
2020, I think. It
So
doesn't
they
need to
learn-
take that long, but they have been building on it. It has been improving, etc. So I'm very keen to hear what they're gonna talk about in the Rethinking the Art of the Possible session at the Bank Scene Art Night. But it has become more than just a loyalty scheme. It's also a way for bank customers to pay their bank products by shopping at the right merchants, etc. So it's more than a simple loyalty scheme. But what I want to say is that they've been testing a lot with the narrative about the Kate coin. You see the same with, for example, Kate herself as well, the chatbot. They've been testing what works, what doesn't work. And then it's about that narrative and constantly reviewing what works, what doesn't, what resonates, what doesn't, etc. And whether you do that with data or digital in general, I think it's a pretty standard best practice approach to take.
And that was one of my suggested opportunities that I provided in the blog, was treating narrative as infrastructure. So to build narrative audits into your model lifecycle, make sure that who carries the risk, who benefits, all of that aligns with the customer's expectations and experience. If you just take something, even if you take it from the United States and put it in Europe, so we put something closer to home, there are a lot of decisions and outcomes that potentially we wouldn't expect, because the American approach to credit scores and to reputation and trust is different to us here in Europe.
Wait until you start about identity.
Well, yes.
And you recently had faced a very good case in the UK as well. The average UK citizen is very much against digital identity, I'm told. We in Belgium, for us, it's just common sense.
That is something where I will have to take exception with the country that I now live in, because I don't have a problem with digital identity. I don't see it as a big brother way of the government tracking me. As far as I'm concerned, if I've got nothing to hide, I really, and it's not like they're going to be tracking my phone. The digital
Change your identity.
ID,
They're not going to make you Chris Skinner suddenly.
it's just to validate who I am in a simple way that actually makes my life easier. And I've always found it rather strange that the average British person reacts so violently to any form of identity. I mean, I've carried my driver's license with me since I got my driver's license in this country. It was just a natural thing. I've always got it in my pocket. And yet the number of my friends here in the UK, they go, I'm not going to carry my driver's license. They've got no right to demand my identity unless they want to put me in custody and make me prove my identity. And I'm going, really? Isn't it just easier to go, this is who I am, this is who I live, no problem. And I see digital identity the same way. So yeah, identity is another whole topic that maybe we should do, culturally aligned identity one day. And even the concept of identity is strange. But getting back to this panel and the cultural alignment, while they all agreed it was desirable, my key question to them was is it feasible? And all three panelists believe that even within the constraints of today's regulation and regulatory frameworks, making your AI that you deploy in a particular geography, making it more culturally sensitive is actually feasible. And that, to me, was good news, because I was concerned that somebody was going to say, no, look, it's unfeasible. You can't do it. All three of them, and two of them actively work with financial institutions and help them on AI algorithm, on model framework, on ethics implementation, all this kind of a thing. They are hands-on practitioners, and they both said, that Ammar and Patricia, they both said, yes, it is feasible. It's both desirable and feasible and can be done. And there's nothing preventing you from doing it. If I wanted to be provocative, I would say nothing preventing the banks other than inertia. They've already adopted something from head office, and now we've got to take something into account for the local population. We hadn't built that into the project plan. We hadn't thought about it. So the advice is, if you're going to deploy something in a geography other than what it was created for in the first place, start taking cultural alignment and sensitivity into account. And I think also, if people want to hear more about narratives and storytelling and how creatives can help banks improve customer understanding and financial literacy, they should come to the Banking Scene Art Night. And we've got a short clip from Lisa that we can hear her views that I recorded just after she got off the stage at Sibos.
Yes, I'm an Emmy-Award-Winning filmmaker. I mostly work in the UN space, and I work as a filmmaker, but I also work with a lot of different artists. Collectively, we're referred to as the creative economy. And what I like to say about working between arts and policy, which I think I can make the parallel between arts and finance, is that we're more than entertainment. We are translators and amplifiers of sometimes really complex or dense, information. So while in the UN space, I'm dealing with policies and resolutions and programs, et cetera, I can actually see the same potential here, where we're taking really complex information around financial literacy, financial education, and using art forms to help translate and amplify it to a wider audience. So I see tons of potential, and I would love to see more artists here in the future.
Exciting. All right.
I think that we should wrap this up here.